Standing at 12 feet and stretching 96 miles, the Berlin Wall was the ultimate barrier between East and West, and for 28 years it would play its ultimate role as the Iron Curtain, and historically be a pivotal factor in the Cold War, from its rise to its fall. It all started back in 1949. The recent war had ripped through Europe, leaving many nations battered and bruised. A defeated Germany, now in ruins, was under occupation. It had been divided into two separate states of East Germany, which focused on communism, and West Germany that believed in capitalism, and so a strict border was created. These states were occupied by the main allies of World War II. The West was occupied by Britain, America and France, while the East was controlled by the Soviet Union. The same occurred with Berlin. It too had been cut up into East and West. The people in the East disliked the regime. They found it oppressive and didn't like the lack of freedom of speech, along with the strong communist influence imposed by Soviet Russia. So many people were unhappy that between 1949 and 1961, 3.5 million people fled to the West, 3/4 of those going to West Berlin. East Germany was losing its workforce, and fast. Something had to be done to stop this, and so, on the 12th of August 1961, while the city was busy with its annual film festival, the Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev gave the orders for the East German leader Walter Ulbricht to construct a reinforced barrier that would seal off the West and East Berlin border. At midnight on August 13, 1961, East German troops and workers began tearing up the streets running along the border to stop any vehicle access. They installed 96 miles of breeze block, topped off with ravels of barbed wire, to build this makeshift border. The American troops at the Checkpoint Charlie border crossing were given orders by President Kennedy not to touch the wall. He didn't want to provoke a war with the Soviets. All the soldiers could do was watch. Every physical place on the border was bricked up, from windows in buildings to even sewers. It tore families, allegiances, and even livelihoods apart.
I think it's unimaginable to us to try and think about waking up one morning to find we've been separated from our jobs, from our friends, from our family. I think it had a massive impact on people, with the people on the east being the without and the people on the west being the with.
The Americans let it happen, and so the mass migration of people to the west came to a halt. Only foreigners or military personnel were allowed to cross the border now into West Berlin. It soon became more than just a wall. Then came watchtowers, automatic machine guns, and even minefields. Furthermore, it was controlled by an army equivalent to the population of Gibraltar. The barrier also included what was known as the Death Strip, an open area for shooting anyone trying to cross. So, as the two German nations drifted further apart by the wall, it still didn't stop people in the desperate east escaping to the west. By 1964, 70 underground tunnels had been dug from east to west and west to east, leading to a further 250 people escaping.
But East Germany was grim. Food shortages, lack of jobs, threats, just a generally really grim place to be that people were really desperate to escape from.
The war worked in favour of the East German government. With their workers now unable to escape, the state began to stabilise its economy and establish itself globally. However, to the west, the Berlin Wall was still a thorn in international relations. It had the nickname of the Iron Curtain for the entire Eastern Bloc of communist territories. The Soviet Union resented West Germany, as it was strongly backed by America, and this is where John F. Kennedy made his dynamic Ich bin ein Berliner speech in 1963.
As a free man, I take pride in the words Ich bin ein Berliner.
In 1971, Erich Honecker becomes the new leader of East Germany. He wanted to portray himself as a leader of a modern-day nation. In 1981, the war celebrated its 20th anniversary with parades and events. On the other hand though, it was nothing to celebrate about. The war was costing $500 million annually to maintain, a third of East Germany's gross national product. On the verge of bankruptcy, West Germany gives the East German government loans, with one condition, that the automatic guns on the wall had to go. In 1985, while the Cold War was at its climax, Mikhail Gorbachev became the new premier of Soviet Russia. He wanted to bring about peaceful reforms, in which America saw this as an opportunity. In July 1987, US President Ronald Reagan delivered his famous speech at the Brandenburg
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
In 1989, borders in Poland and Hungary collapsed, and 13,000 East German tourists swept into Western nations. Now the East Berliners wanted the same. Protests took place across East Germany. Honecker wanted Soviet tanks sent in. Gorbachev refused. Finally, on the 9th of November 1989, the head of the Communist Party in East Berlin, Gunter Schabowski, announced to journalists that citizens there could now move freely into West Berlin from immediate effect. It was a mistake. He was actually meant to say from tomorrow. However, the moment they heard this, thousands hastily made their way into West Berlin. People then began to chip at the wall to get in. It was all over. In its 28 years of existence, 5,000 people had managed to escape, despite the wall. But unfortunately, 136 people didn't make it out alive. Less than a year later, in 1990, Germany was reunified and became one nation again. In 2014, Germany celebrated 25 years since the Berlin Wall's fall.